My name is David Phelan, and in this presentation, we're going to focus on the tool of rehearsing gratitudes. And in order to set that up, I'd like to suggest a context for us as we're working with these ideas. And that context is to think about what's going on in your life right now, and perhaps to think about an area of improvement. Most people that I talk with have at least one thing going on in their life that they would like to be different. So it might be a situation where they're feeling stuck, or they have a desire to improve something. It might be related to work or career. It could be their financial situation. Maybe it's their health or their emotional health. It could be spirituality, wanting to have a connection with something greater than themselves. Maybe it's a sense of wanting to make a greater impact or to make a contribution. It could be recreation, not being able to relax as much as they would like to, not be able to enjoy themselves as much as they would like to. Or perhaps it's relationships, maybe a relationship with a partner or a child, maybe a family member, a friend, a colleague. So most people have at least one area of their life where they would like to see some improvement. So I just want you to take a moment and think about kind of where you're at right now and what that area of improvement might be for you. Let me give you a minute to think about that, and then we'll continue the presentation. Now I'd like you to imagine, what would it be like if you were able to be there already? Imagine that you could fast forward through all of the work that was necessary to get to that place, and that was already going on in your life. Whatever that improvement was already happening. What would that be like for you? The reason I suggest this as a context for the work that we're doing is the mindset tools that we use are all about creating the kind of life that we want to have. For some people, it will be about resolving distressing states that they're experiencing. For other people, it will be about becoming the best version of themselves that they can be. But it's all about what's going on with our mind and how to use our mind to improve our lives. If we're using mindset tools to resolve a distressing situation, one of the models that I teach my clients is that oftentimes the distress that we experience happens in episodes. So there might be an episode of conflict with a particular person, or an episode of anxiety, or an episode of making progress and then relapsing or regressing. In a situation where what you're going through is happening in episodes, then we can use the mindset tools before, during, or after the episode. And so when we think about rehearsing gratitudes as a mindset tool, part of what I would like to set up for you is how you can use this tool to be able to address distress that's happening in episodes. But also, I'd like to help you to set up how you can use it just as an empowering emotional state. Like if I want to be a better husband, then I might recognize that empowering emotional states like confidence or motivation or determination help me to be a better husband. Likewise, if I want to be a better father, if I want to be a better coworker, being in the right emotional states can empower me to do that. So using a mindset tool like rehearsing gratitudes can help us both to alleviate distress as well as to elicit the empowering emotional states that we would like to be in. But one of the challenges that we can run into is that creating the empowering states or resolving distress takes a concerted effort. And with as busy as our lives can be, sometimes we have difficulty finding the time or creating the space or the opportunity to practice this. And so as I work with my clients, I encourage them to think about these mindset tools and how they can apply them in their own lives. For some people, they find that having a morning routine makes it easier for them to build in these mindset tools as a daily practice. For other people, they know that morning isn't the best for them. They'd rather do something in the evening. For other clients that I work with, they find it helpful to have sort of milestone activities throughout the day. So it might be that somebody knows that every day they eat lunch, and so they can use a mindset tool like rehearsing gratitudes at lunchtime, and they know that if they create that connection between those two, that it's going to show up more consistently in their lives. So when you're thinking about the area of improvement that you would like to see in your own life, then you can ask yourself, okay, how am I going to set that out? How am I going to create the space for that? If I can use rehearsing gratitudes as a tool to help me get there, then how do I want to make that happen in my life? And after we go through what the tool is, then you'll have a better idea about how to create the space for that for yourself. So why would we want to focus on gratitude? You know, here in the United States, there is a huge emphasis on productivity. We're constantly being asked to do more. We're constantly being asked to pay attention to different things and to work on it and to improve it. And one of the challenges with that productivity mindset is that oftentimes we can find ourselves just in a rut of doing and doing and doing and doing. And the satisfaction that we could be experiencing in life sometimes gets missed when we're in that rut. As human beings, we want to think about not just the doing of our lives, but also the being of our lives. And so when I work with clients on helping them to identify the purpose of their being and the purpose of their doing, then we can use a tool like rehearsing gratitudes to keep us connected to the reason that we are here on this planet, our being, as well as to focus our doing. As human beings, as we pursue things, one of the states that all human beings pursue is a state of happiness. So you can look at different philosophical or religious traditions. Like think about in Christianity. You know, Jesus teaches the Beatitudes. What are the Beatitudes? The Beatitudes are strategies for being happy. Or you can look at like Buddhism. The Dalai Lama wrote a book called The Art of Happiness. Or you can look in popular culture, like the icon of the happy face, right? There's a reason that these things are prominent in our society, in our culture, in our awareness, because every human being is pursuing happiness. We'd like to have greater sense of contentment, greater senses of satisfaction. But we can run into a situation where the things that we think are going to make us happy don't really make us happy. And so if happiness is the pursuit, sometimes we can miss it. There is an author, David Steindl-Rast, and I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing his last name correct, but he did a TED Talk where he addresses the connection between gratitude and happiness. And his suggestion is that happiness is the byproduct of gratitude. So when we pursue being grateful, then happiness ends up being the result. And so this tool that we have of rehearsing gratitudes, it gives us a specific way to remain engaged in a grateful attitude so that happiness can be the result. Now, one of the things that David Steindl-Rast talks about is, well, what is it that we are actually grateful for? And he makes this distinction that there are things in our lives that we have as a result of our effort. We worked for it, we earned it, we merited it in some way, but those aren't the things for which we feel grateful. We might feel other pleasant or empowering states when we've worked something and we've achieved it, but it's not, the state isn't gratefulness. His suggestion is that what we feel grateful for are things where we have the experience that we've received it as a gift, that we didn't earn it, that we didn't merit it or achieve it. So if you think about an example like my paycheck, if I work for 2 weeks and then my employer gives me a paycheck, that may seem to me like a just exchange. I gave you the hours, you gave me the money, but it doesn't feel like I've received a gift. So the feeling that goes along with that is not gratefulness. But when you think of something that you receive that you didn't merit, that you didn't earn, then it elicits a different emotional state. And Ras goes on to talk about the reality is that every single person has so much in their life that we've received as a gift that we couldn't earn even if we wanted to. We couldn't merit even if we wanted to. And when we allow ourselves to focus on those things and experience that feeling of gratitude, then again, happiness is the byproduct. And he goes on to say that not only are we surrounded by things that are gifts in our lives, but really each moment of our life is a gift, because it is not within our power to create ourselves nor to sustain ourselves in existence. We were never promised this moment, right? We know people in our lives who didn't make it to this moment. And so we can recognize that even this moment is a gift. Now, for a lot of people, what's going on in the present situation is difficult or unpleasant. And so is it really reasonable to be grateful for difficulty or grateful for unpleasantness? And so Rast recognizes that. And the question that he asks, though, is, can we find an opportunity in a difficulty? Can we find an opportunity to extend ourselves? Can we find an opportunity to grow, to become stronger, to become more flexible? And as we grow in those areas, are we not becoming a better version of ourselves so that this difficulty or challenge or unpleasantness is the catalyst for that growth? So we can be grateful for the opportunity, even if it's not reasonable to be grateful for the difficulty. So we want to focus on gratefulness because we know that it leads to happiness. But as we said before, if we don't have a specific way to do this in our lives, then it may not show up. It can be difficult to sustain an attitude of gratitude if we don't have a practice. And so that's how this mindset tool was created, is that we were looking for a way to be able to sustain that attitude. Now, as I was working with this, I wanted to find a way to do this that operated consistently with how our mind works. My experience is that when we operate consistently with our design, that's how we get the best results. And two of those operating parameters that became important in the work that we're doing are state-dependent recall, which is one way that the mind works, and the second is the mind's ability to group things together and to tease things out. So state-dependent recall is a really well documented phenomena that says that it's easier to remember something that happened in the past when we are currently in the same emotional state in which we first experienced that. And so the idea is that if we are happy, it's easier to remember something in the past where we were happy. If we're angry, it's easier to remember angry things. So you've probably had this experience. If you've ever been in a conflict with somebody, and in the middle of that conflict, what came to mind was all the other things that person did that was annoying to you, right? That's an example of state-dependent recall. Well, if we know that's the way the mind works, then we can use that to our advantage. And in a few minutes, I'll describe how that got incorporated into this tool. The second operating parameter was our ability to group things together and to tease things apart. And so, the example that I'd like to use is, think about taking a vacation, like a vacation that you've already been. And imagine that on that vacation, there was a person who went with you, and that person's only job was to take pictures of all the happy moments of that trip. And then imagine that they printed them out and they put them together in one of those old school photo albums. And imagine that photo album is sitting on your counter. And every time you walk by, you look at the photo album and you remember that trip and you have the experience, oh yeah, that was a great trip. What I want you to think about is, where would the feeling be stronger? If you're looking at that photo album as one thing, or if you open up the photo album and you flip through picture by picture, remembering all the great moments, where's the feeling going to be stronger? Right? Well, you probably can recognize that the feeling is going to be stronger as you go through those individual elements. So the mind is capable of grouping things together and teasing things apart. And when we tease things apart, that's when it becomes emotionally more intense. So what tends to happen is, when we're angry, we tend to group the things together that we could be happy about or we could be content about, and we tease apart all the things that are annoying or frustrating. When we're happy, on the other hand, we tend to group together the things that might be frustrating or annoying and tease out all the things that are happy or satisfying or from which we find contentment. So the mind, again, is doing this all the time already. And so when I was working on developing this tool, I wanted to use those two elements to our advantage. So the tool itself, rehearsing gratitudes. So I'm going to give you an experience of this. And in order to do that, I'd like you to take a few minutes and write down a list of 3 to 5 things for which you're grateful. And those things can be anything. It can be people that you're grateful for. It can be things that you have that you're grateful for. It can be situations that you've experienced in your life that you're grateful for. But just see if you can come up with several items for which you're grateful. And I'm going to give you guys just a few minutes to do that. Okay, now that you've come up with a few items, and if you don't have 5, that's okay. Whatever you have is good enough for us to start with. So what I'd like you to do now is to rate your current level of happiness. If 0 is not happy at all, and 10 is the most happy, where would you rate yourself right now? And just write that number down on the page. Okay. And so I want you to think about this as our starting place. So rehearsing gratitudes starts with a list like you've developed. And when I'm working with a group of people, oftentimes I'll ask them to start with a list of 10 or 20 items. So this is what we start with. And then the rehearsing part of it is that I'm going to ask you to spend a few moments thinking about each of the items on your list. So think about item number 1 and try to bring it to mind in as much detail as you can. And going back to the operating parameters of the mind, we know that when we focus on the details, it makes it more intense. So spend a few moments bringing that to mind in as much detail as you can, trying to experience the sense of gratitude that you have for that. Okay. Now, when we do the rehearsing, feeling the feeling is the most important part of it, right? So once you've taken a few moments to experience the feeling of gratitude for the first item, then go on to the second item. And then go all the way through each of the items on your list. And again, I'm going to give you just a little bit of time to do that. So go ahead and do that now. And then once you come to the end of that, I'd like you to rate that level of happiness again. On that scale of 0 to 10, if 0 is completely sad, down depressed, 10 is the most happy, where would you rate yourself? And I just want you to notice when you did that, if the number moved. Now, we didn't take a lot of time to do that in this particular exercise, but what I want you to imagine is imagine that you had a list of 10 or 20 or 50 items on your list, and you spent that time really appreciating it and really feeling that sense of gratitude. And what would that be like for you? And now that you've gone through that exercise, now what I'd like you to do is to see if you can identify 1 or 2 more items and then add that to your list as well. So when we spend time, experience a sense of gratitude, and then at the end, see if we can find additional items to be grateful for, we're using that idea of state-dependent recall. The happier we are, the more grateful we are, the easier it's going to be to identify additional elements, right? Now, sometimes when I'm working with people, they get stuck with, well, what else do I have to be grateful for? And this is the opportunity where we can use grouping together and teasing things apart. So sometimes people will write on their list, well, I'm grateful for my family. Okay, but that's a group. Could you break that apart? Could you identify individual people in your family? Or they'll say, I'm grateful that I have a job, right? Okay, great. Well, then can you break out the individual elements of your job? And so just with the items that you already have, sometimes you can tease them apart to find other things for which to be grateful. So that's the tool of rehearsing gratitudes. So we want to start with the list and then rate our state, how happy we are, then go through the list, spending a few moments with each of the items, really allowing ourselves to feel the sense of gratitude with it, and then rate our state again, noticing the shift. And the reason the rating is important is when we notice the shift, then it reinforces this idea of how helpful this can be for us. Like, this makes a real difference. And if we're caught up in the business of our life and we remember, hey, yeah, I can focus on my gratitudes. If I don't recognize and connect with the benefit that it has for me, it might just end up on the bottom of the list of my things to do. So that's why I ask people to rate their state both before and after. And then once you've done that, then again, end by adding a few more items to your list. Now, once you know what the tool is, so this is the Rehearsing Gratitudes tool, again, how do we use it? Well, one way to use it would be to get out of a distressing state. If somebody is feeling frustrated, if somebody is feeling anxious, they can use rehearsing gratitudes, going through their list of gratitudes and feeling the gratitude as a way to interrupt that state. Now, one of the challenges with distressing states that happen in episodes is that in the middle of the episode can be the most difficult time to apply a mindset tool because of the distress that's created. Oftentimes we'll take the front of our brain offline, which means we don't have access to our problem-solving skills and our recall and things like that. So if you try to use this as an intervention in a distressing state and it doesn't work, just know that that can be the reason. So the more that it's practiced before we're in a distressing state, the more likely it is to be useful to help us to get out of the distressing state. So one way to use the tool is, again, to change a distressing state. But another way to use it is just to generate that sense of happiness and create the empowering states that we want to be in a more consistent basis. So if you're looking to be able to use rehearsing gratitudes to generate these empowering states, then you might want to think about incorporating it as part of your daily practice. And then thinking about, okay, what would work best for me? Does it work best for me to do this in the morning? Does it work best in the evening? Is there a milestone activity throughout the day to which I can attach this, like a meal? Or sometimes, my clients will use something like coming to a red light to practice one of the mindset tools, or taking a shower or brushing their teeth, or they take their dog for a walk every day, and so they'll incorporate a mindset tool with that. So there are a number of different ways that we can use the tool once we know what the tool is. So that's rehearsing gratitudes as a mindset tool. And there's more than 20 different tools that we work with. And so I just want to encourage you, if you want to learn more about the tools, we're going to be doing these presentations every week. And also feel free to reach out to me if you want to work with me directly. Thank you for joining us for this presentation. We're going to turn off the recording now, and if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.